Welcome. Tonight, we will cover the moment when silence was broken. Before the phenomenon fractured reality, before time became a weapon, one man stepped into the light to expose what others buried in shadow. This chapter begins not in a forest, but in a secure hearing room beneath Washington, D.C., where retired Air Force Sergeant Jack Barrett testifies about the most covert operation in human history. What he reveals will challenge memory, defy logic, and ignite everything to come.
Whispers in the blackened skies, echoes through the dreamless night. A mirror held beyond our sight, the first hello, the longest lie. Perhaps the stars were never far, perhaps the end was just the start. We touched the void, it touched our hearts, a secret call we dared not fight. An enigma in the fading light, a question written in our minds. We crossed the threshold, left behind, to wonder, to find. Beyond the mist, beyond the trees, a voice that sang what none could see. First contact is an ancient key, unlocking who we're meant to be. Beyond the trees, a voice that sang what none could see. First contact is an ancient key, unlocking who we're meant to be.
The chamber lights dimmed as the witness took his seat. Cameras were forbidden. What followed would be transcribed, redacted, buried, yet ripple through time like a stone dropped in black water. The room was not a standard Senate hearing hall. This was a SACF, secure compartmented information facility, buried deep beneath the Capitol. The temperature inside was cold, almost intentionally uncomfortable. The thick, steel-reinforced walls were designed to repel electronic surveillance. Every few feet, recessed sensors blinked quietly. The hearing was convened by the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Seated among them, silent Heavy with presence were the full members of the Gang of Eight. The Speaker of the House, the Senate majority and minority leaders, and the top chairs and ranking members of both intelligence committees. They did not speak. They observed. Every figure at the table represented the machinery of national survival, and they were about to be confronted with a truth they could no longer control. At the center table sat Jack Barrett, retired USAF technical sergeant, and his attorney, Michael Rourke. The sergeant-at-arms approached with a worn leather Bible. "Please stand and raise your right hand." Jack and Rourke stood. "Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?" "I do," Jack said, steady. "I do," Rourke confirmed. They sat. The gavel struck sharply. Jack leaned into the microphone. "Madam Chairwoman, honorable members of the committee, before we proceed, I ask you to remember this. This isn't just about lights in the sky or classified projects. This is about human lives." He paused, gathering their attention. Men and women, soldiers, airmen, scientists, were exposed to phenomena they didn't understand. Some have died without explanation. Others have lived but not unchanged. What we encountered in Rendlesham was not an isolated incident. It was a doorway, and it wasn't open to study the unknown. It was opened to weaponize it. Jack placed his hands flat on the table. The human factor, the suffering, the exposure, the silence, was not an accident. It was the cost of ambition. Rourke leaned slightly into his own mic. "You are not merely stewards of classified information. You are stewards of consequence." The room grew still. Senator Maria Ortiz, chairwoman, began. "Mr. Barrett, please tell this committee what you encountered." Jack's voice, steady but loaded. "December 26th, 1980. 0300 hours, RAF, Woodbridge, Suffolk, England." Jack described the lights, red, blue, white, cutting through the black mist. The oppressive weight of static, the unnatural distortion of sound and sensation. "We believed it was a crash. But there was no wreckage, no fire, no debris." He leaned forward slightly. Instead, there was something else. Senator Halverson scribbled on his notepad. Senator Graham pressed, "Are you suggesting you experienced telepathic communication?" "I'm reporting what I experienced, Senator." Graham pressed harder. "Hallucination, then?" Rourke calmly interjected, "Objection. The witness is not offering speculative diagnosis." "Sustained," said Ortiz. Jack answered anyway. "No hallucination. The communication was direct, intentional." Jack opened a binder labeled Project Condin, declassified. He tapped the page. British Ministry of Defence findings. Exposure to UAP radiation may result in cognitive confusion, physiological symptoms, and altered states of perception. He switched to a digital excerpt from the White House Office of Science and Technology. "Our technologies permit us to manipulate time and space." Jack let it settle. "That's no longer theory. It's public record." Senator Voss asked sharply, "Are you telling us the United States had this technology in 1980? Jack's tone hardened. "I'm telling you it was tested, and we were the instruments." Jack placed his sealed medical file forward. "After the encounter, I developed cardiac deterioration consistent with radiation-linked damage. Emergency open-heart surgery followed." He looked at them evenly. "Others suffered neurological decay, chronological dislocation." Jack's voice softened. The colonel who oversaw the third night said it bluntly. If what happened here ever went public, it would change the way people viewed reality itself. The silence thickened. Jack could feel it, the growing dread no one dared name. Senator Halvorsen leaned back heavily. "Why now, Mr. Barrett?" Jack's eyes burned with resolve. "Because the timeline is collapsing. Because the technology we encountered, the consciousness behind it, is no longer dormant. It is moving." He leaned in sharply. "And if you think the phenomenon is waiting for congressional approval before it changes reality again..." Jack's voice lowered to a dark whisper. "You're already too late." Jack's voice remained steady as he continued. "The technologies seeded in Rendlesham, the manipulations of space-time, the experiments against Soviet assets, have quietly matured." He paused. "Today, elements of those technologies are fully operational, weaponized, and all without your consent." Michael Rourke stiffened slightly beside him. The scientists involved, the original architects of Operation Echo Frame, did not stop. They found new sponsors, private contractors. They moved underground. Jack's voice became a blade. "They are no longer studying the unknown. They are engineering it." A long, frozen silence fell. Jack let it stretch. Behind the mirrored glass, he knew. Decisions were already being made. And so, with one voice, Jack Barrett reopens a door that was never meant to be unlocked. The phenomenon is moving again, and the countdown has already begun. That's it for tonight. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. Tonight, we step beyond testimony into memory. Chapter 2 pulls back the veil of official deniability and enters the cold corridors of intelligence. Here, the Rendlesham incident isn't folklore. It's evidence. Through Jack Barrett's eyes, we revisit the moment when time buckled, when 3 airmen entered a forest and crossed into something not entirely of this world. And what they brought back may never leave them.
Was nothing, just lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil. Sergeant K whispered, "It's not ahead, it's below. Fuse dog tags and timeout ought to flow." They never found what we left in that light, but it's humming in blood and it won't come out right. They filed a report, redacted my name, buried the footage, rewrote the game, but I still hear it deep in the noise, a signal that speaks with my voice. I came back with salt on my skin, my soul unthreaded from where I had been. They say I survived, but I know I failed, left something behind in the green veil. So if you hear static out under the pine and feel like your breath ain't following time, don't look too close, don't break the seal. Some echoes are meant to stay buried in the field.
Jack sat forward, eyes adjusting to the stark interior. No cameras, no press, no protocol. Just layers of classified oversight buried beneath polished marble and silence. The official line for these hearings was disclosure. A word polished for headlines, engineered for optimism, but Jack knew better. The truth was buried deeper than most of the senators in that room were cleared to know. The public was being misled. Disclosure wasn't imminent. It was impossible. Not when Congress itself had no grasp of what was buried below, or why. He resented the charade. He didn't believe the world needed every detail, but it deserved better than pageantry and half-truths. As Jack prepared to speak, his thoughts began to slip, slipping backward through memory. Back to December 1980. To the cold wind, the static. To the night, everything changed. Behind the glass, he could already read the room. The whispered sidebars, the urgent notes exchanged, the body language tightening with every word. His testimony wasn't just revealing the past, it was activating the present, triggering alarms. And he knew the risks. The warnings had been explicit. If he ever went public, the consequences would be his to carry. But the scientists had finally forced his hand. The same ones who stood beside the anomaly, who had monitored him ever since. The ones who had quietly secured his DoD medical support and buried his records deep in special access programs. He had resisted for years, but now the cost of silence outweighed the fear. He wasn't here by accident. He was here because those who once stared into the anomaly alongside him had pushed him forward. And now, history was about to wake up. It was Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green, the very scientists who had been stationed near the twin bases during the original incident, who quietly lobbied for Jack to appear. They knew the stakes. They had seen what the event truly was, and how close it came to destabilizing everything. Since 1980, those same scientists had quietly tracked Jack through a special access programs established shortly after his evaluation at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. His health, neurological shifts, and unexplained advancements had been monitored in secrecy ever since. They also wanted Congress to understand just how far behind the United States was falling, behind the Chinese, behind the Russians, with other nations rapidly catching up. Congress, at this point, was only interested in one thing, what was being hidden from them and where the money trail led. Even the president had no idea how deep this went or what was lurking just below the surface, behind the Chinese, behind the Russians, with other nations rapidly catching up. These scientists knew that if lawmakers fully grasped the implications, it would shift funding priorities away from conventional systems and toward exotic technologies. They needed resources, they needed personnel, and they needed it now. Their signatures were on the buried reports, and now they wanted the truth to come out, before it happened again. As he began to recant what took place, he started flashing back, his mind pulling him to December 1980, to the cold wind, the static, and the moment reality first began to slip. "Then I'll start from the beginning," he said. "From the night it all began." The panel nodded. The room fell silent. A brief break was taken before they reconvened. Phone calls were made, questions were asked, and aides were instructed to set up follow-up meetings with key intelligence agencies. Those with the highest clearance began digging into the most classified files, searching for anything that could validate or suppress what Jack was about to say. Jack Barrett. Debriefing Room, Echo 1, January 1981. Jack Barrett sat beneath humming fluorescent lights, flanked by 3 intelligence officers. Not military, but intelligence. None wore insignia. Each had a leather folder and blank eyes. Their names were aliases, but their purpose was clear. David Harper, OSI. Christopher Hunter Green, CIA. Reed Nolan, NSA. Harper leaned in. From the beginning, no details left out. Jack rubbed his temples. We weren't chasing lights. We were being pulled. Jack's initial contact wasn't supposed to mean anything. He was running a standard perimeter sweep as Police 5, covering a remote stretch near the East Gate, a frostbitten corridor where foxes outnumbered personnel. Just past 0300 hours, the static on the radio gave a low click. Then Jack keyed in. Police 5 to Control, we've got movement. Bright pulses in the tree line. Directional, non-random. Request visual confirmation. Control came back quickly. Copy. Police 5. Please expand on what you're observing. Jack turned the rover toward the East Gate corridor and activated the side-mounted spotlight. The frost along the treetops lit up briefly, then dimmed as something above refracted the beam unnaturally. He raised the radio again. Police 5 to Control. We have a structured light form, stationary above the Capel sector. Unknown origin, not aircraft, not flare. Requesting assessment. There was a pause, slightly longer this time. Then copy, Police 5. Hold position, dispatching Security 4. Security Team 4 was dispatched from Woodbridge Base. It was the SRT, Security Response Team, for the installation. Jack remained in visual contact with the object as they approached. One of the team leads, Sergeant McCabe, exited with a starlight scope and said only one word. Jesus. That's when everything went quiet. No wind, no communications, no forest. The staged test. Unknown to Jack, several military and civilian agencies had converged on East Anglia in the days before the event. Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green were stationed nearby, monitoring experiments tied to a covert initiative, Operation Echo Protocol. This wasn't just about UAPs, it was about time modulation and terahertz field testing. An atmospheric burst, believed to have been caused by the downing of a Zenit 6U Soviet spy satellite, collided with anomalous plasma fields already forming over Capel Green. The result wasn't merely visual. It warped the field itself. A time dilation bubble was forming that Jack and his team would soon encounter. Interaction. After the sighting was confirmed, base radio relays lit up. Protocol dictated that no on-base security detail could enter off-grid wooded sectors without clearance from command. Jack's team stood at the edge of the access trail, scanning for new movement, while Control relayed the request up the chain. 3 minutes passed. Then the call came through, direct and clipped. Security 4, this is Captain Rorden. You are cleared for controlled entry into the forest. Log your position every 60 seconds. Eyes open. We had radar contact with an object over the forest. It's gone now. Proceed with caution. Log your position every 60 seconds. Eyes open. McCabe acknowledged. McCabe muttered, they actually cleared us. Jack just nodded and stepped forward. The air was colder now. The green mist curled around the trees like sea foam in slow motion. Their boots broke frozen moss and old pine. And that's when the anomaly began to shift. As Jack and his team approached the structure, time stretched. For the 3 men, the sensation was disorienting, like walking through molasses made of light. The forest no longer obeyed the natural flow of cause and effect. Frost on the branches seemed to freeze mid-fall. Their own breathing echoed back to them out of sync. The closer they got, the more unmoored they became. Jack would later describe it as stepping through a threshold where linear time collapsed into a loop. The structure, the source, seemed to pulse not only with energy, but with memory itself. Each step forward caused flashes, images that didn't belong, voices out of order, fractured moments that hadn't yet happened. He remembered chasing the light deeper into the woods. He and the other airman, referred to only in records as Airmen C, were closest when it happened. The object didn't simply evade them, it drew them in. It manipulated distance. What was 20 feet away 1 second became a mile the next. Time dilated in bursts, slowing thought, stretching emotion, and distorting sequence. Neurologically, this type of exposure can fracture memory encoding, leading to retrograde amnesia, or worse, false memories folded in from parallel mental states. That's what made recalling it so difficult. That's why Jack didn't walk into the light. He recalled remembering it. Visual confirmation. Jack drew a quick breath as the light reassembled itself. Not as a craft, but as a perfectly spherical mass of radiant energy, suspended just above the frost-bitten earth. Its core blazed with a molten red-orange glow, pulsing like a living heart. Around it shimmered a thin atmospheric shell, deep violet and electric blue, almost fluid in motion. The colors didn't bleed. They reacted. When Jack stepped closer, the blues sharpened into a ring, like the object was watching him. Later, intelligence analysts would pull a still frame from thermal and electromagnetic footage taken from a forward listening post on the edge of Capel Green. The image showed the same thing Jack remembered, blurry but undeniable. A burning sphere suspended in gravity, framed in plasma, brighter than the night around it. That image, low resolution but deeply unsettling, would go on to appear in classified DIA briefings, marked with 3 words: phase-locked object, the missing man. Jack wasn't the only one who changed that night. One of the airmen, referred to only in surviving records as Airman C, vanished with Jack at 0330 hours during the second approach to the anomaly. The fog had thickened around them, curling into the trees like a living sheath. The radios went dead. McCabe shouted, but the sound was swallowed. Jack took a step forward, and then he was gone. So was Airman C. The forest emptied. Lost time. When Jack reappeared, he was lying at the edge of the clearing, soaked in sweat, gasping like he'd surfaced from deep water. His boots were wet with salt water, though the nearest coast was miles away. A thick hum resonated in his bones and his hands shook uncontrollably. His watch was cracked. It now read 4:28, but his internal perception was different. He thought only seconds had passed. They found Airman C 22 minutes later, slumped against a tree near Capel Green. He was pale, covered in cold dew, staring up at the sky as if it were still happening. He whispered, "The echo isn't forward, it's beneath." Psychological fallout. Airman C was later examined with his EEG showing theta spikes. His body clock was misaligned by 43 hours, and his dog tags were warped, edges fused without a burn mark. Jack later received a photograph in an unmarked envelope. It showed 3 silhouettes near Capel Green. One was Jack, one was McCabe. The third was Airman C, his body facing away, but his face looking directly into the camera. Scientific Observations, Echo Protocol, Annex C. Compiled from field notes and post-incident telemetry by Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green. Subject, Incident Night 1, Barrett exposure. Facility, RAF Woodbridge, Temporary Field Ops Unit Echo. The following summary reflects the combined field observations and physiological analysis conducted by Dr. Elias Voss and Dr. Christopher Hunter Green, the on-site scientific directors assigned to monitor anomalous electromagnetic and gravitational conditions during Operation Echo Protocol. Their analysis concludes the following. A stationary plasma sphere was present above Barrett's position. An infrared targeting beam, possibly from a covert aerial platform, intersected the phenomenon. This contact caused plasma asymmetry, leading to a violent downward energy displacement. The discharge enveloped Barrett in a multi-frequency electromagnetic vortex, altering measurable biological function and localized temporal conditions. The plasma didn't just react. It responded, Dr. Rayner wrote, as if the system recognized him. Dr. Voss noted that Barrett's biofeedback under stress showed pre-signal harmonization seconds before direct exposure, indicating entanglement may have begun prior to physical contact. Their comparison to fusion reactor behavior is critical. It resembled a controlled plasma collapse under external excitation, like glass blowing in reverse. Internal pressure forced an exit path downward, projecting the entire energy mass over Barrett. Conclusion: Jack Barrett was not a passive observer. He was the index node, the trigger point around which the anomaly stabilized. The convergence event was not accidental. It was targeted. Back in the debriefing room, Nolan raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying you traveled through time?" "No," Jack said. "I'm saying time traveled through me." The officers left the room without a word. Jack was transferred to a secure medical unit within 12 hours. What came next would change his body and the world forever. After they woke, they returned to the East Gate, where they were met by the flight chief and several other personnel. They couldn't explain what happened. There was missing time, and their watches were 45 minutes behind. The flight chief told them they'd lost radio contact with the team for an extended period. He pulled McCabe and Jack aside and quietly explained that he had sent 4 personnel out to search for them. Those men returned quickly, shaken. They had found the security vehicle, but Jack and the others were gone. What they did see was a large orange sphere in the distance, and each described the same uncanny sensation. Time was beginning to stand still. Spooked and disoriented, they retreated without engaging. Jack took a breath, his voice low and deliberate as the room quieted once more. "I've told you what we encountered. The lights, the time slip, the man who vanished and came back broken. But there's something else I haven't said yet. Something that changes everything." He looked down at his hands, then back up at the faces behind the glass. "That first night we went out into the forest, it wasn't just a search and report. I'm going to tell you what they were already working on before we ever stepped between those trees." He leaned forward. "I'll show you what I discovered they were building, why they needed that anomaly, and why it chose me." That was also when the cover-up began. The moment the anomaly touched them, something larger moved into place. The documentation became classified within hours. Orders were issued from above the base command. Certain recordings were pulled. Radar data was erased. Statements were quietly collected and rewritten. Those involved in initiating the cover-up included select members of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Ministry of Defense, a discrete subgroup within the National Reconnaissance Office, and key elements of the CIA, specifically led by Dr. Christopher Hunter Green. It was not one agency, it was a coalition. A convergence of those who had been waiting for something like this to happen. And now they had it. They weren't just covering up an encounter. They were protecting an asset, and Jack Barrett had become that asset. What they didn't expect was that the asset could remember. His memory was suppressed during the initial investigation. Techniques were used, chemical, psychological, and possibly electromagnetic, to blur the lines of time and dull his ability to recall what had truly happened. And for a while, it worked. But beginning 8 years later, under hypnosis, Jack's memories began to surface. Not all at once, but in fragments, symbols, impressions, voices. He started communicating with the phenomenon, or rather, it started communicating with him. The more he unlocked, the more it revealed. And then one night, in the silence between waking and sleep, it said one thing clearly: "We will be back for you." And Jack Barrett had become that asset. History didn't lose track of us that night. It started keeping score. They said it was weather. They said it was fiction. But Jack knew better. He didn't just witness the anomaly. He was rewritten by it. As the agencies buried the truth and time blurred behind closed doors, one message rang clear through the static. We will be back for you. And in Chapter 3, they return. Previously, in Chapter 2, The Green Veil, we witnessed Jack Barrett begin his testimony before Congress, recounting the first night of the Rendlesham incident. He described the strange lights, the sudden radio silence, and the overwhelming time distortion he and his team encountered deep in the forest. Unbeknownst to them, an advanced experiment was unfolding, a convergence of secret technologies and an ancient anomaly buried beneath the earth. The truth: they weren't just chasing lights, they were chosen. Now, in Chapter 3, Echoes, we go behind the scenes, into the minds of those who orchestrated what Jack would walk into the early stages of Echo Protocol, the deliberate entanglement of time, consciousness, and plasma-based intelligence. You'll meet the scientists who knew more than they were allowed to say, and you'll learn just how far they were willing to go to provoke the unknown. And as Jack comes face to face with a mirrored version of himself, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the beginning of a message.
Time forgets to turn. A spark was drawn from silence, and frost began to burn. Footsteps in the static, shadows split the dawn. They walked into the breach and something else walked on. We didn't stumble through the dark, we followed voices from the spark. A signal called, we stepped inside, not just a gate, but a fault line wide. Watched himself from outside time. Reflections been outpaced the climb. We didn't stumble through the dark, we were invited from the start. Echoes stretched across the line between the signal and the sign. The veil pulled back, the silence fled. We touched the past
December 25, 1980, East Anglia, England. Dr. Elias Voss lit a cigarette on a cliff edge near Orford Ness, the North Sea wind slicing through his coat. His eyes scanned the dark horizon, not for weather, not for waves, but for resonance. He wasn't just here as a physicist. He was a guardian of the unexplainable. Behind him, Christopher Pike, an astrophysicist working on an officially funded plasma physics project during the time of the Rendlesham incident, arrived late, stumbling through documents and bags. He'd been summoned 2 days before Christmas with no brief, only a name, Echo Protocol. Pike had previously focused on ball lightning, natural plasma glows, earth lights, and similar phenomena. Plasmas are electrified gas in which the atoms have been split into positively charged nuclei and negatively charged electrons. If you pump energy into a gas, it creates a plasma. He somehow became embroiled in scientific investigations in Suffolk in late December 1980, unaware at the time that a UAP incident was developing. What he thought was a physics investigation was dangerously overlapping into the murky world of ufology. The Berwyn incident connection. Pike had studied UAP plasma cases before, including the mysterious Berwyn Mountains incident in Wales. A night of fireballs, ground tremors, and a metallic object retrieved under military secrecy. But this was more structured, more intentional. Martlesham Heath, SCIF briefing. Pike was taken into a SCIF beneath RAF Martlesham Heath, where Voss, NSA observers, and MOD DI-55 analysts convened. They weren't chasing UAPs, they were preparing to stage one. The operation, use a directed atmospheric burst to bring down a Soviet Zenit 6U satellite, then observe how the anomaly interacted with the surrounding fields. Operation Echo Protocol. On the early morning of December the 26th, 1980, 0200, a coordinated effort was launched. A classified radar array, retrofitted with pulse compression technology and integrated with a modular phased array emitter system, focused on the predicted re-entry window of the Soviet Zenit 6U reconnaissance satellite. At precisely 2 a.m., the system released a concentrated beam of terahertz radiation interlaced with ELF, extremely low frequency, harmonic waves. This energy, focused like a lens through the misty upper layers of the troposphere, destabilized the satellite's orbital integrity. Unbeknownst to most involved, a secondary component had also been activated, a human one. Voss and Pike had been working with a classified Department of Defense contractor to test the effects of directed cognitive influence, psionics, on signal-reactive plasma environments. A test subject, remotely monitored and emotionally amplified through a psychoacoustic induction system, was present at the moment of satellite destabilization. The combined waveform, both technological and conscious, triggered a resonance collapse, resulting in the satellite systems catastrophically failing. It was not just shot down, it was pulled down. 3 goals. Bring down the satellite quietly. Stage a cover phenomenon in Rendlesham. Study the anomaly's temporal reaction. We're not testing technology, Voss said. We're testing reality. Back at RAF Woodbridge, Jack Barrett, 21, was restless. His instincts screamed. He felt the shift before it happened. The air warped, the forest lit with light that wasn't from stars. He stepped toward it. He didn't know he was stepping into the center of an experiment. He only knew he had to go. Classified testimony. Present day. Back in the present, inside a closed-door hearing, Jack stared into a panel of stunned officials. The object wasn't Russian, it wasn't alien, it was aware. He paused. And I wasn't the first. But I may have been the first to survive it. The mind fracture. When Jack woke in the infirmary at RAF Bentwaters, his bones felt like they were vibrating. The lights were too bright, but the shadows beneath them, too slow. Dr. Elias Voss stood at his bedside, no clipboard, no small talk. "I'm not your physician," he said, "but I am your analyst." Jack stared at him. "Why do I feel like I'm still in it?" Voss looked over his shoulder as if someone might be listening. "Because you are." He paused. "You're carrying the harmonic residue." Voss handed Jack a small Polaroid, one of the classified photos recovered near Capel Green. At first glance, it was just a blur of mist and light. But behind the anomaly, faintly visible through the trees, was Jack. And behind Jack, another figure, identical stance, identical uniform, face obscured. Jack whispered, "That's not possible." Voss sat down. "We think your consciousness bifurcated." Dr. Elias Voss, internal memo. Restricted circulation, subject, neural displacement and signal trace. Barrett anomaly. Barrett exhibits symptoms of entangled awareness. He is reporting memories that have not yet occurred. Time exposure appears to have fractured his cognitive mirror. His body remains here. His mind may not. Echo Protocol Debrief, entry number 7, audio redacted, RAF Martlesham Heath, temporary Black Trace facility. Voss and Pike sat in a dim analysis chamber, reviewing telemetry from the forest. "Rewind 12 seconds, Voss said. Pike tapped the console. The infrared recording slowed, revealing the moment Jack entered the light. "There," Voss whispered. "Do you see it?" A brief pulse, too brief to register as visual, flickered across the screen. Then a shadow peeled away from Jack's form. It moved in reverse, like a film unspooling backwards. A mirror walking away from its subject. The Russian intercept. On December 26, 1980, a GRU signals unit outside Kaliningrad intercepted a narrow band frequency pulsed from East Anglia. The message was encrypted using a Cold War-era protocol not in service since 1974. The content was a single phrase, repeated 3 times. "Echo Protocol is active." The intercept reached Soviet High Command within 4 hours. Their response? Escalate orbital surveillance. Within 72 hours, a reconnaissance satellite passed over Capel Green. It captured something moving beneath the frost line. It wasn't natural. It wasn't alone. The underground structure. Back at Martlesham Heath, excavation had already begun. A buried structure was discovered 200 feet beneath Capel Green. Not ruins, not rock, machined alloy, precision carved, pre-atomic. Pike stood at the edge of the borehole. "This thing's older than the Cold War," he said. "Maybe older than war." Voss ran his hand over a hexagonal interface, still warm to the touch. "It's emitting a biosignal." Jack approached the edge, and the structure pulsed. A ring of light shimmered across the interface, matching his breathing. Then he heard it, a voice, inside his skull. "You're already inside." Mind space log. Christopher Pike. Entry redacted. Date December 26, 1980. We believe the structure below Capel Green is a form of temporal anchor, either left here or activated by the recent energy event. Its interaction with Barrett is unique. No other test subject, civilian or trained, has elicited a signal reaction. I fear we are not just dealing with consciousness bleed. We are dealing with a convergence vector. Barrett may be the fulcrum. Or the fuse. Back in the vault. Jack sat motionless. The red light above him flickered, then steadied. "Do you believe this was a test?" one of the interviewers asked. Jack didn't answer right away. He stared at the photograph still clutched in his hand, the one with his twin reflection watching from behind the mist. Then he looked up. "No," he said. "It was a message. Post-debrief protocol. Before Jack could process what came next, Voss gave a subtle nod to the attending medical officer. A cold hush followed. "We can't risk destabilization," Voss said quietly. "He needs to forget, for now." Jack was administered a controlled neurochemical block designed to suspend recall of the debrief, the structure, and the signal. Not a permanent erasure, only a veil. "It's reversible," Pike confirmed, "but necessary. He'll remember when the signal wants him to." Within hours, Jack Barrett was returned to duty. No memory of the testimony, no knowledge of what was buried beneath Capel Green. But the signal was still inside him. And it was waiting. In Chapter 3, we learned that the phenomenon was never random. The Soviet satellite wasn't just targeted, it was bait. Jack Barrett wasn't a bystander. He was the signal's catalyst. Through psionic interaction, harmonic residue, and the emergence of a future self, Jack began to fracture, not just in memory, but in time. The structure beneath Capel Green responded to him, the plasma field stabilized around him, and the phenomenon, it spoke through him. Now, in Chapter 4, the signal splice, the ripple effect of that first night begins to reach forward. Jack wakes, confused and changed, still under the pull of the forest, but far away in 2025, inside a hidden congressional vault, new players step forward. Dr. Elias Voss takes the stand, and what he reveals will shake the foundation of national defense, time theory, and what we thought we knew about the Tic Tac incident. Prepare yourselves. The signal wasn't just received. Previously, in Chapter 3, Echoes of the Fault Line. The signal awakens. Dr. Elias Voss and Christopher Pike pulled back the veil on a Cold War operation unlike anything on record. A Soviet satellite was brought down. A plasma field was triggered. And Jack Barrett, he didn't just witness the anomaly. He walked into it. As we step into Chapter 4, the signal splice, the timeline splits again. Jack wakes in 1980, unsure how he returned from the forest. But deep inside, the phenomenon is still calling him back. Meanwhile, 45 years later in Washington, D.C., Dr. Elias Voss stands before a classified Senate hearing. With Barrett at his side, Voss begins to explain what the world was never supposed to know, that Rendlesham was the first test, that Tic Tac was the second, and that both were born from the same technology, a signal seeded across time. The signal is no longer waiting. In this chapter, you'll hear a classified report, Echo Frame's own analysis, December 27th, 1980. Jack Barrett woke in his bed, heart pounding, mouth dry. He didn't remember coming back. The last thing he recalled was standing at the edge of something, bright, breathing, and impossibly quiet. Now he was lying beneath coarse military sheets in the barracks at RAF Woodbridge. For a moment, he wondered if the entire experience had been a dream, but the ache in his bones and the humming in his chest said otherwise. His eyes darted to the frost-edged window. The forest was calling him. Not with words, with presence. Jack pulled himself upright, rubbing his temple. The memories weren't gone. They were just submerged, waiting. As the base stirred with the early shuffle of guards and ground crews, he knew something unfinished had begun. Classified briefing, U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, Washington, D.C., December 17, 2025. In a secure vault beneath the Capitol, a classified session had reconvened. This was day 2 of the closed hearings that began with Jack Barrett's sworn testimony. Seated behind lead-lined walls, the United States Senate Intelligence Committee and members of the Gang of Eight prepared for the arrival of Dr. Elias Voss. The night before, Barrett had testified about the events of December 1980, what he saw in Rendlesham Forest, what he experienced, and what had been done to him. Now they were ready for corroboration. Dr. Voss had arrived in D.C. under special escort as an architect of the once-buried Operation Echo Protocol. He was no longer a shadow. He was now a key witness. As aides distributed documents stamped in red, the room fell quiet. Barrett sat once more behind the reinforced table. Voss stepped to the stand. Eyes only, classified briefing. Project Echo Protocol, Internal Analysis Document 07-1981. Date, January 15th, 1981. Original compilation date. Reviewed, December 17th, 2025. Compiled by Division 9, Harmonic Field Intelligence, HFI. Clearance, Cosmic Top Secret, Echo Frame. Senator Halvorsen cleared his throat. Dr. Voss, you're certain this report hasn't been circulated outside this room? Voss nodded gravely. Not even to the Pentagon, only the agency heads directly tied to Operation Mirrorlink. The panel leaned in. Aides dimmed the lights. 1. Executive Overview. Between December 26th to 28th, 1980, USAF Technical Sergeant Jack Barrett, stationed at RAF Woodbridge, encountered a localized atmospheric anomaly exhibiting non-linear flight, electromagnetic interference, and apparent spatio-temporal deviation. 3 days of sustained sensor disturbances and personnel interactions suggest the deliberate staging of an intelligence-driven UAP interface event. Subsequent analysis indicates convergence with data from Project Condign, UK Modi 2000, classified until 2006. Sensor confirmed 2004 USS Nimitz Tic Tac encounter. Archived anomalies from Orford Nest plasma trials, initiated under Cobra Mist. The question no longer remains whether this is terrestrial or extraterrestrial. The operational framing now reads, Engineered convergence through controlled atmospheric geometry. 2. Condign model, field replication and effects. Certain unidentified aerial phenomena may be due to highly charged buoyant plasmas, capable of interacting with electromagnetic systems and biological observers. Condign, Volume 2, Paragraph 46. A. Project Condin postulated the existence of electromagnetic plasma, constructs that mimic advanced craft, emit focused microwave or RF radiation, create local sensor blindness, jamming, vanishing. influence perception and time continuity in witnesses. Rendlesham correlation. Barrett reported a structure made of light, shifting under observation. Time-lapse reported as 3 minutes. External logs registered 18. Surveillance cameras at WSA recorded signal dropout and flare compression, consistent with plasma envelope diffusion. Tic-tac match. Hovering without thrust, vectoring. Accelerative velocities greater than Mach 10 without boom shock. Radar lock disrupted across SPY-1 and FLIR systems. Pilot cognition slowed during visual phase lock. Both events match Condon's plasma field cognitive bleed model. 3. Undisclosed field testing, possible man-made or controlled deployment. Data gathered at Rendlesham suggests human co-participation in the event. USAF/CIA liaison, Lieutenant Malcolm Rayner and Dr. Elias Voss initiated signal conditioning prior to main incident. Barrett's ECG showed electromagnetic entrainment patterns, resonating with Orford Ness emitter logs from 1977. British radar logs from Neatishead confirm an object descending from 80,000 feet to 200 feet in less than 1.3 seconds. This may not have been a visitation. It may have been an activation. Project Condon's proposed use of plasma as a stealth medium and perceptual manipulator fits the signature of Black Tier prototype testing, possibly coordinated under Operation Mirror Link, a program scrubbed post 1979. 4. The time dilation signature. Condign hints but avoids direct discussion of time domain anomalies. Jack Barrett's debriefing includes encountering a future echo of himself inside a hall of mirrors, witnessing external events before they occurred, corroborated by later military log entries, being told you're already inside. This matches Condon's most controversial Appendix G, redacted in public release, which describes localized space-time distortions caused by high-density EM propagation may result in field-based time compression or perceptual stasis. Furthermore, Barrett's DNA shows mitochondrial anomalies post-incident. He registers oscillatory EEG frequencies consistent with neural phase bleeding observed in SRI remote viewers. 5. Operational conclusion. There are 3 primary hypotheses. A. Man-made technology, breakaway tier. An engineered craft utilizing plasma cloaking, inertial mass manipulation, and directed EM jamming to simulate UAP performance. Barrett's interaction was part of a control experiment. B. Hybrid intervention. A genuine, non-human intelligence operating through field resonant structures. The Rendlesham incident was invited by earlier Cold War experiments, creating a feedback aperture in space-time. See natural plasma. Consciousness. As Project Condon subtly infers, UAPs may be non-biological atmospheric intelligences, reacting to human observation or tech intrusion. Plasma is not just a medium, it is the signal. 6. Recommended actions. Barrett to remain under echo frame watch until signal harmonics return to baseline. Do not expose full Condon annex to Allied or Congressional review. Resume synthetic plasma lattice tests at Site Delta, UK, and Site Sigma, Alaska. Monitor for recurrence at grid node Capel Green. Addendum. Field note, Dr. Voss. You don't chase these things. You let them open the door. The trick is knowing when you've already stepped through it. As the lights came up and Voss stepped down from the podium, Senator Ortiz raised a hand. One more question, Dr. Voss. Did the writers of Project Condon use the Rendlesham data in their assessment? Voss nodded. Yes, though heavily obfuscated. The incident was folded into broader categories under plasma-related phenomena. Direct citations were scrubbed, But make no mistake, the Rendlesham encounter heavily influenced Condon's core models. Another senator followed up. And how much of what occurred there impacted the development of current technologies? Voss took a breath. More than I can explain in a single hearing. Plasma lattice projection, cognitive interface testing, and harmonic frequency mapping all originated from post-Rendlesham research. What happened to Sergeant Barrett and the others, especially the biological resonance effects, led directly to the studies that now underpin next-generation stealth and sensor evasion systems. "Did you provoke the phenomenon deliberately?" someone asked. "We did," Voss replied. "Using overlapping RF frequencies, ground-based emitters, and human biometric targeting, we identified Barrett's frequency response ahead of time. The anomaly did not initiate contact. It responded to ours." A younger senator leaned forward. "One last question, Dr. Voss. Did the Rendlesham event directly lead to the technology we observed during the Tic Tac incident in 2004? Were you involved?" Voss paused, then nodded. "Yes, the link is direct. Rendlesham wasn't an isolated event. It was the ignition point, the research frameworks that emerged from it, particularly harmonic propulsion modeling and plasma masking physics, fed directly into dark access test programs that evolved into what was seen by the Nimitz carrier group." He adjusted his glasses. "You have to understand, what they saw wasn't an accident. It was part of a controlled exposure window. The Tic Tac event served two purposes: real-time proof of maneuverability using mass reduction fields, and a live test of U.S. Navy sensor fusion systems against non-linear craft behavior. We weren't just observing it. We were testing our defenses against it." One senator frowned. "Are you saying it was staged?" "Partially," Voss said. "The object was real, but its exposure was managed. It was a test of response time, perception thresholds, radar coherence. The Nimitz wasn't just seeing a UAP. They were seeing the result of decades of layered experiments. Rendlesham was first. Nimitz was the proof of concept." Barrett glanced across the room. The timeline had shifted once, and now it was beginning again. His voice pierced the silence. "Let me take you back to December 1980. A voice from the dais followed immediately. "Dr. Voss, you are not excused. We will have many more questions as Jack continues to testify." Chapter 4. The signal splice delivered more than testimony. It unveiled a system, an echo loop between past experiments and future consequences. Dr. Elias Voss didn't just confirm what happened in Rendlesham. He exposed the truth that it wasn't an accident. Plasma fields were engineered. Time dilation was measurable. And Jack Barrett, he wasn't chosen randomly. He was identified, tracked, conditioned, and drawn into the heart of a defense project that blurred the line between science and sorcery. Through Voss's classified report, the committee learned that Condon buried the truth in plain sight, that Tic Tac was part of a decades-long continuum, and that what happened in East Anglia might be happening again. Jack is no longer alone. The committee is listening, but with each new revelation, another question echoes louder. If this was staged, then who or what is really in control? In Chapter 5, The Double Blind, Jack begins to remember more than what was repressed, because something buried beneath Capel Green is waking up, and it's calling him. Previously, the forest wasn't the only thing holding secrets. Dr. Elias Voss, called before Congress for the first time in 4 decades, confirmed what many feared, but few dared speak aloud. Rendlesham wasn't an isolated event. It was the opening move in a long, calculated operation, one designed to test the boundaries between perception and reality. Voss testified that Project Condon, the Tic Tac incident, and the experiments conducted at Capel Green were connected through engineered plasma fields, advanced signal modulation, and something far more elusive, consciousness itself. Jack Barrett's return to the spotlight wasn't just about disclosure. It was about convergence. The forest had changed him, and now the phenomenon wasn't done. Tonight we begin again, with Jack awakening from a sleep he doesn't remember entering, drawn back toward the forest and toward the part of himself that never returned. This time, he won't be alone. This time, it knows he's coming.
Silence between dreams and dawn, where shadows speak and time is drawn. They called him back, though part remained, in echoes lost and memory chained. The signal pulses quiet deep, and hearts that wake but never sleep. Two men return with broken threads to chase the lights their future bled. It whispered through the wires at night, through veils of green and spectral light. A memory not yet lived still burns, but time once cracked, it never learns. The countdown hides in static air. The forest calls, the breach laid bare. Jack wakes inside a deeper plan. The echo knows just who I am. And in the frost where watchers stood, the shadow truth still haunts the wood. The shape returns, the veil begins, and no one leaves with what they bring.
December 27th, 1980, RAF. Woodbridge. Jack bolted upright in bed. He didn't know how he'd gotten there. His last memory was distorted. Fragments of frost, silence, and light. But the forest wasn't done with him. Not yet. "You are not whole." The voice wasn't audible. It vibrated in his marrow. "Part of you remained. You must return. Nightfall. The 27th. He stumbled to his feet, hands trembling. For a split second, the mirror across the room reflected someone else. Same frame, same eyes, but older. Something hadn't returned with him, or something had, but stayed behind. RAF Martlesham, Heath, 1400 hours. Dr. Elias Voss tapped through new telemetry while Christopher Pike reviewed field charts. A new harmonic pattern had registered, one too deliberate to be random. 3,447 hours, inverted field, 12.9 Hz spike, duration 11 seconds. Langley was already aware. Their footprint was expanding. Pike wasn't just observing Jack, he was embedded due to what happened the night of December the 26th. After that encounter, Jack's memory had been chemically suppressed by order of a special access program, and Pike, whose plasma field research intersected with the anomaly's energy signature, was assigned to track his neurological evolution. Jack's memory wasn't damaged. It was being restructured. Pike was one of the few who had seen the early modeling. He understood the phenomenon didn't erase. It embedded. Intel report. Echo frame cover. Briefing. Meanwhile, the Soviets had deployed a frog team to intercept debris from Novasat, a classified Zenit-based spy satellite rumored to carry plasma field sensors and exotic EM propagation test beds. Voss knew this wasn't coincidence. The satellite's re-entry path intersected the anomaly field, Capel Green. They needed a cover story. Fast. Voss, Pike, and CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green coordinated with Langley to position a psychological monitoring team on base. The wing commander was briefed. Anomalous activity was expected. His role was simple: dispatch a routine investigation team when the lights appeared. The commander had been informed of the frog team's proximity, the need to misdirect recovery operations, and the involvement of high-tier surveillance systems. He wasn't happy, but he agreed. December 27th, OSI interrogation room. Sergeant B sat across from two intelligence officers. His eyes were bloodshot but sharp. Described the moment the lights appeared. "We were just inside the tree line, heard static on the radios. No voices, just distortion. Then the lights came in from the left, hovering in a pattern like... not random. And then... my men started to freeze, not out of fear, like their bodies wouldn't respond. I told them to fall back, but I stayed. Because Jack had stayed the first night. Did you speak to it? It didn't need to. I felt it in my spine, like a signal, asking who we were." Following the debrief, Sergeant B's memory was chemically veiled. He was returned to duty the same day, unaware that the signal he encountered had already marked him. But the suppression was failing. Like Jack, the block mechanisms, both pharmaceutical and hypnotic, were degrading. They weren't supposed to remember. But the phenomenon had other plans. Later, that night, Jack's quarters. Jack sat hunched at a metal desk, tracing spirals again and again. His hand moved without instruction. Pike entered quietly. "I intercepted this." He laid down a spectrogram, a sharp crimson spike, 4 seconds wide. "That's not noise," Pike said. "That's you, responding." Jack didn't answer. "Why do I feel like I've already gone back?" "Because part of you has." Washington, D.C., present day. Dr. Voss stood before the Intelligence Committee, hands clasped. Was this a provoked event? It was, Voss said. Engineered convergence. The Rendlesham experiment seeded the field. Did this lead to the Nimitz incident? Yes. The signatures match. That wasn't an accident. It was a benchmark test, both for our hardware and for something else. Why the test? To see if our systems could engage the phenomenon without collapsing. He leaned forward. But we weren't just watching it. It was watching us. Dr. Voss, you're not excused, as we will be adjourning for the evening and reconvening at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We will have many more questions as Mr. Barrett continues to testify. RAF, Woodbridge, December 27th, 22:30 hours. The air shimmered at the edge of the tree line. Jack and Sergeant B stood side by side. Neither spoke. The forest was calling them back. And this time, it wasn't just for observation. The signals were no longer silent. Jack and Sergeant B had entered the forest changed men, touched not just by light, but by intent. The phenomenon hadn't simply returned, it had evolved. Their memories, once chemically veiled and buried beneath layers of psychological interference, were beginning to slip free. Each flash of recognition, each pulse of harmonic resonance carried the weight of a larger truth. The phenomenon wasn't just observing, it was orchestrating. Behind every shadowed corridor at Langley, behind every redacted memo and closed-door testimony, the same question was starting to whisper its way into every agency involved. Who sent the signal, and what is it waiting for? The countdown had already begun. The forest had called them again. Chapter 5 left us with the signal stirring once more. Jack Barrett awoken by something older than memory and deeper than time itself. He had sensed it from the start, but now the phenomenon was no longer content with echoes. It wanted presence, and it had marked them. Jack wasn't the only one pulled back. Sergeant B had also begun to remember, pieces fractured by chemical veiling, stitched together by something he couldn't name. The memory blocks were failing and the phenomenon knew it. During the second night, while the base slept under stars veiled in frost, Sergeant B had encountered the anomaly. Lights that weren't lights, sounds that bypassed the ears. A question that embedded itself in his spine, who are you? But neither man was given time to process what had happened. Their return to duty was rapid, their minds altered, their memories surgically reduced. Only Pike knew why. Dr. Christopher Pike had monitored every burst, every pulse, every irregularity. Jack's neurological data didn't just spike, it harmonized. And when the signal flared again, Pike knew it wasn't done. That's why he stayed close. Not as a handler, but as a witness. Now Chapter 6 begins. The timeline fractures again. A surveillance team is dispatched. The phenomenon begins to show signs of agency. Jack and Sergeant B stand at the edge of a second encounter, and this time, others are watching. The question is no longer what they'll see. The question is, who will return?
In the forest deep where silence breaks, time unwinds and memory wakes. The lights return like ghostly drums, calling back the ones it summons. Static hums beneath the skin. The air folds in and breathes again. Footsteps vanish in the frost. Two men found, but one is lost. shattered bridge. Five shadows near the tree line pause, their ranks held fast by unseen laws. A beam descends without a sound. Jack dissolves, then isn't found. Sergeant B still stands in trance, as if he's heard the forest chant. Pike records, Voss turns pale. Hunter Green begins the tale. It's already begun. It never ended. The echo's not from outer space, it's what we've always defended. The threshold breathes and time stands still. The forest bends to unseen will. Witnesses now altered men, trying to unsee what they saw then. But the veil won't hold for long. The signals learned our song. So write it down and seal the file. Swear your oath and fake the smile. But Jack has crossed and B still dreams of lights that burn and silence screams. One truth remains behind all seams. The threshold breathes, and it remembers.
The congressional hearing resumed promptly at 10 a.m. The air inside the vault was colder and more sterile than before. Jack Barrett sat forward once again. Beside him, Dr. Elias Voss adjusted his glasses. The chairman cleared his throat. Dr. Voss, let's return to your prior testimony. You indicated that the Rendlesham encounter had measurable effects on both perception and time. Voss nodded. Yes, that's correct. And you've previously stated that the effects align with phenomena outlined in the UK's Project Condon? They do, specifically the sections relating to charged plasmas affecting neurological function and temporal coherence in observers. Jack's brainwave patterns. They were altered, not randomly, but in patterned, harmonized response. One of the junior committee members interjected, how much of our current technology traces back to what was learned that night? Voss hesitated. Much of it, he said. Signal conditioning, predictive modeling, inertial dampening prototypes. Even some of the hardware involved in the Nimitz Tic-Tac incident had fingerprints that began in East Anglia. Another member leaned forward. Are you saying Rendlesham led to the Tic-Tac? In part. The simulation parameters developed through Echo Protocol were later used in Navy training exercises, but something interacted with those parameters in real time. We didn't just simulate contact, we provoked it. RAF Woodbridge, East Gate Sector. Jack Barrett and Sergeant B stood at the edge of the tree line, silent as mist curled like vaporous fingers between the pines. Their boots crunched softly in the frost, but neither moved further. Jack broke the silence. You feel that? Sergeant B nodded slowly, like a tide under the skin. Above them, the sky pulsed, red, then violet, like it was breathing. A sphere hovered to the south, its form indistinct but steady. On the horizon, two more lights moved unnaturally, shifting direction without inertia. The time was 3:15 hours. Inside the security control room, Christopher Pike adjusted the dials on a Cold War-era trans-spectral monitor. He'd been reassigned, quietly, by the CIA to oversee temporal field studies, something he'd once believed was pure theory. Now, he watched the screens stutter. "We have a pulse," he said. A coded signal from underground had activated. Across the compound, a specially assigned NSA team worked to mask electronic signatures. Radio bands were scrambled, surveillance feeds rerouted. The goal: keep the Russians blind. But they weren't. Intelligence had confirmed a Soviet frog team had been dispatched days earlier. Their target: recover what they believed to be a downed satellite, a Zenit series spy payload that had never landed. What they didn't know was that it had been vaporized mid-descent by a classified radar harmonic field, one designed by the same minds behind Operation Echo Protocol. The cover story had already been staged. The wing commander was briefed in vague terms: routine exercise, possible foreign intrusion, a need to test readiness. If the lights returned, if movement was seen, he would send men. That was all Pike needed. The Forest activation. The 5-man Air Force team dispatched by the wing commander consisted of Captain Devin Haynes, Technical Sergeant Luis Moreno, Senior Airman Trent Vickers, Airman First Class Neil Avery, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, team lead. As they stepped into the tree line, they moved cautiously, night vision scopes sweeping the shadows. Vickers paused first. "Something's wrong with the air," he said. "It's heavy." Moreno checked his Geiger counter. "We've got minor fluctuations." Then it happened. A pulse. Barrett whispered, "You feel that?" Sergeant B nodded slowly, like a tide, under the skin. They stepped forward. The field shimmered. Inside the NSA forward ops van, analysts were already recording tachyon differentials. One voice crackled over a secure channel. "They've entered phase lock. The Russians are turning back." Outside the forest perimeter, a small Soviet recon team, disguised as NATO personnel, were taken into custody by British and U.S. intelligence assets. The mist shimmered and bent toward Jack and Sergeant B. A cone of light enveloped the two men as the time dilation bubble formed. Jack turned briefly, his eyes glowing faintly, and then, as if pulled by invisible strings, he vanished. No flash, no sound, just gone. Sergeant B stumbled backward, collapsing to one knee. "Jack!" he shouted. But there was no answer. Avery's voice trembled. "Did you see that? He just phased out." Captain Haynes immediately called for containment, but communications were distorted. Back at the command trailer, Pike stood frozen. "They saw it," he muttered. Dr. Elias Voss looked pale. "The field pulled him. We thought it was ambient. It's targeted." Hunter Green entered the room, face like stone. "Lock it down," he ordered. "They saw too much." "Those men are witnesses," Pike argued. "Then make them assets," Hunter Green said. "Or ghosts." Debrief room Echo. 1 hour later. Jack was still missing. The 5-man team was contained along with Sergeant B. Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning and the rest of the recon team sat in silence. In front of them, Dr. Voss deconstructed the telemetry data on a glowing screen. "This isn't random," he said. Barrett's interaction triggered a feedback loop. The structure responded to him. The Soviets were after a satellite. We were after what came after. Pike added, "They didn't just witness a phenomenon, they witnessed the next step in its evolution." Hunter Green crossed his arms. "From this point forward, I'm taking lead. Lock down the logs. Debrief these men separately. No record leaves this facility." He turned toward Voss and Pike. "We don't have time for caution anymore. The phenomenon made its move. Voss whispered, "And Jack Barrett's no longer in our timeline." Hunter Green's voice dropped. "Then we'd better find out where he is." They had been told to observe, to record, to stay just far enough back. But distance meant nothing in the Rendlesham anomaly. The 5-man Air Force surveillance team, Major Ethan Rourke, Captain Dylan Sharp, First Lieutenant Kai Soto, Technical Sergeant Brennan Vale, and Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Holden, had witnessed something no training could prepare them for. From the frostbitten tree line, they saw Sergeant B immobilized mid-sentence, his body caught between motion and stillness. They saw Jack Barrett move forward, then disappear, not like a man cloaked, but like a man erased. Not gone. Absorbed. Holden tried to radio command. Static. Sharp attempted visual lock. No response. And then came the pulse. Bright, fluid, folding light around absence. Madge Rourke dropped to his knees, unable to breathe. Vale whispered, "It's seeing us." When the light finally collapsed, only Sergeant B remained, barely coherent. Jack was gone. The trees no longer whispered. They echoed. Back at command, Dr. Voss and Pike scrambled for an explanation that could fit inside a classified briefing. They couldn't find one. CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green made the call. From now on, he would lead. The timeline was collapsing, and the cover story was no longer optional. It was mandatory. Jack Barrett has crossed the veil. In Chapter 7, we enter the Echo Interior, a dimensional overlay where Jack awakens not in space, but in time. His body is present, but his mind is untethered. He hears voices, some human, some not. He sees future versions of himself, and he isn't alone. Back on Earth, the Langley team prepares for containment. Sergeant B begins to change, and the first signal from deep beneath Capel Green transmits back. Its message is not a warning. It's a countdown. Previously, in Chapter 6, Jack Barrett and Sergeant B were drawn back into the forest under orders cloaked in secrecy. What began as a containment mission quickly unraveled into something far stranger, an encounter not only with the anomaly, but with time itself. Surveillance teams monitored from afar. The mist returned. Lights danced above Capel Green. Then Jack vanished again, into the pulse. 4 Air Force personnel witnessed it, men trained for war, not the metaphysical. And what they saw, Jack's form phasing out of sequence, the beam of light descending, time collapsing like breath pulled inward, was burned into their memories. Back at command, Captain Christopher Pike watched the readings spike. Voss tried to rationalize. Hunter Green, however, moved into position. The cover story would begin immediately. No congressional hearing, no reports filed. Just layers of silence. Now, the morning after the event, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning was already showing signs of behavioral conditioning, trigger words embedded deep, old programming reactivated. He had led the recovery team, but now he could be used in other ways. Hunter Green took control, answering only to the CIA director. Jack was missing. Again. And the anomaly wasn't done with them. Sergeant B, fragmented but still tethered, would have to return. There was no other choice. To bring Jack back, they would need to build another bubble. Only this time, it wouldn't be an accident. It would be an invocation.
Beyond the frost, beyond the veil, we walk the edge where memories fail. A shimmer broke the midnight air, and time unspooled beyond repair. Through the rift we lost our name, carried by light, return in flame. One steps forward, one remained. The echo split, but never waned. The forest watched with ancient eyes as futures bled from fractured skies. It called us back, it knew the cost. To take him back or leave him lost. The shadow moved, the truth deceived, but something greater was conceived. In that stillness something spoke. You are the fracture and the cloak. Through the rift, through veiled command, we touch the truth we'd never planned. And now the ones who dare recall stand ready for the final call.
The cover-up began before dawn. Within hours of Jack Barrett's disappearance into the second anomaly, command channels erupted in controlled chaos. The 5-man Air Force team dispatched by the wing commander consisted of Captain Devin Haynes, Technical Sergeant Luis Moreno, Senior Airman Trent Vickers, Airman First Class Neil Avery, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, team lead. Each had witnessed what could only be described as a rift in the forest, a shimmering pocket where light bent, time slowed, and Jack Barrett vanished before their eyes. A white-hot pulse had expanded outward. Sergeant B had tried to pull Jack back, but it was too late. The light collapsed into itself, leaving only frost and silence. Lieutenant Colm Denning, though experienced, stood paralyzed. His eyes locked forward as if waiting for a command that never came. Later in the debriefing, he described a momentary absence of will, as if someone else was holding the strings. That someone was Christopher Hunter-Green. Back at the secure wing of Martlesham Heath, Dr. Voss and Pike scrambled to draft a containment narrative, but Hunter-Green took control. Denning had been compromised, his mind woven with trigger phrases embedded during earlier conditioning sessions. He was one of several Null Command operatives, pre-programmed to respond to very specific cues under high-stress phenomena. With Denning now compromised, Hunter-Green assumed total operational authority. He reported only to the director. "This isn't a retrieval mission," Hunter-Green said flatly. "It's containment." "But Jack's still alive in there," Pike argued. Voss stood silent, watching the signal pulse on the telemetry. "He's not just alive," he said finally. He's broadcasting. Operation Echo Re-entry. Creating a second bubble was risky. The technology had never been tested outside of controlled parameters. The first anomaly had formed naturally, perhaps with subtle provocations. But to force one open again required a full reconstruction of the harmonic sequence embedded in Jack's exposure. They used Barrett's original biosignal signature, layered against EEG patterns extracted from Sergeant B. He was closest to him when the echo burst, Voss explained. The field entangled them both. That's the key. The site was cleared. Ground resonance spikes were placed. A modified starlight scope fed directly into the temporal loop predictor. Sergeant B stood at the forest's edge, sweat already running despite the cold. He didn't understand everything, but he knew one thing. Jack had stayed for him. Now it was his turn. Inside the anomaly. When the second field stabilized, Sergeant B stepped through. The sensation was immediate, like stepping between glass and memory. Light shimmered sideways. Sound bent inward. And there he was. Jack Barrett, eyes unfocused, body crouched defensively. His breath came in sharp bursts, unaware of where or when he truly was. "Jack," Sergeant B called out. At first, no response. Then Jack turned. "You came back. Let's get out of here." Behind them, the light pulsed. The air screamed. Aftermath. The 5 team members were debriefed, memory muted, and reassigned. Official logs would show nothing, just a training exercise. Radar glitch, misidentified aerial event. But each of them knew the truth. And now Hunter Green had control. The forest would never give them answers, only thresholds, and Jack Barrett had just crossed his second. They brought Jack back. Not with ceremony, not with understanding, just light and a terrible silence. He collapsed in the clearing, eyes wide but unfocused, the frost beneath him untouched by time. The others stepped back, unsure whether they had retrieved a man or something transformed. Sergeant B stood over him, trembling. He had heard the signal again, but it wasn't a voice this time. It was music, distant, harmonic, structured like language. Inside the debriefing chamber, Voss watched Jack's vital signs return to human range. Barely. "We don't understand what we pulled out," Pike admitted. "No," Voss said quietly, "but it remembers everything." Hunter Green issued the next directive before the room cleared. Jack Barrett would never be the same. Neither would Earth, because whatever reached through that aperture wasn't done. It had simply been mapping its return. Next, in Chapter 8, Shadow Mirror Underground Site Delta, a secure decontamination bay. Jack stands before his own reflection, but it doesn't move with him. A shadow behaving independently, a consciousness behaving collectively. The CIA launches an internal investigation as Project Mirrorlink is reactivated. Shared visions, echoes of selves. The phenomenon is stabilizing and responding. But across the sea, Soviet monitors intercept anomalous radar echoes near Capel Green. Jack is about to meet his future again, inside a structure that was never built by humans, and one message reverberates through the resonance field. You're already inside. The forest didn't just swallow him, it mirrored him. In Chapter 7, the timeline ruptured. Jack Barrett vanished before the eyes of his fellow airmen, drawn into a spatio-temporal distortion no protocol could explain. Sergeant B, forced back into the anomaly under covert orders, retrieved Jack, but not without cost. 5 men witnessed the impossible. One of them, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, was later identified as a preconditioned asset. Programmed with linguistic triggers, his memory fragmented for strategic use. The others, Haynes, Moreno, Vickers, and Avery, were debriefed, sanitized, and reassigned. Their testimonies now sit in classified vaults, surrounded by redacted transcripts and pseudo-scientific footnotes. A second time dilation bubble was constructed, rushed, unstable, but functional. What returned from it was Jack Barrett, or a version of him. What remained behind, somewhere beneath the Capel Green node, is a question the Pentagon still won't answer. Now, in Chapter 8, the hearings resume. Congress demands specifics. What equipment was used? How was the Soviet satellite retrieved and reintegrated into the timeline? Why were Barrett and Sergeant B's memories wiped? And how does this shape the defense posture of the United States in 2025? What they don't yet know is that the signal never left. It adapted. The men changed. Reality flexed. And a mirror was left behind, waiting, watching, reflecting something no longer entirely human.
Under a forest crowned in ash, we vanish from the lines of time. A pulse was born, a name erased, our echoes folded into rhyme. They said we walk through light and shadow, but never told us what we'd find. Our voices buried in the marrow, while others rewrote humankind. Oh, never struck the earth below. It bent with Jack through quantum scars, a silent orbit we don't show. Memory burned and truth was sealed, our minds reset, our names concealed, but through the veil we still recall the breach that dared to swallow all. So summon us from light unspoken, from shadows cast by secret will. Though time and oath remain unbroken, we walk the forest still.
Senate Intelligence Committee, hearing room, present day. Dr. Voss, please clarify one more time. What equipment was used to retrieve Technical Sergeant Barrett from the phenomenon? Every eye trained on the screen showing thermal overlays and radar inversion from that night in 1980. The chamber had grown quiet. Too quiet. Voss leaned forward. His voice was precise. We used a modified phase-tuned harmonic array, originally developed under Project Mirrorlink, paired with a classified psionic amplifier constructed under the COBRAMIST derivatives. The key was frequency matching. Jack had become entangled with a field operating outside of linear time. Dr. Voss, explain how did you retrieve Sergeant Barrett from the time dilation bubble? Voss clasped his hands. We never expected it to be repeatable, but we monitored harmonic decay patterns and spatio-temporal bleed just outside Capel Green. Using an array of synchronized field generators, variants of directed LF emitters, we were able to reconstruct a phase pocket and draw him back in through resonance matching, like plucking the right frequency from a field of static. I required the most precise operation yet attempted. With Pike's oversight, a second-time dilation bubble was artificially initiated using harmonic pulse arrays positioned around Capel Green. Sergeant B, still unstable from the previous encounter, volunteered to go. The bubble formed. A static storm spread across the forest. Sergeant B stepped into the mist. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, a pulse. Both men returned. Jack collapsed first, followed by Sergeant B moments later. Each had burns on their hands, subtle distortions to their biosignatures, and identical black rings on their inner forearms where no injuries had previously existed. They were medically stabilized. Then, wiped. A chemical memory scrub was deployed, hypnotic reinforcement layered atop blank space conditioning. When they awoke, they remembered only that a storm had interrupted their patrol. Senator Walden narrowed his eyes. And the Russian satellite? It wasn't destroyed, Voss admitted. That was a cover story. It was reabsorbed, temporally displaced, then pulled back into our frame after the convergence. It didn't crash. It was folded back into the loop, reinserted into a non-linear sequence using the same temporal geometry that pulled Jack out. We believe it carried data, perhaps even an early response from the phenomenon. Christopher Hunter Green, seated beside Voss, added, "We brought it in the loop." Same as Barrett, and we learned more than we intended. Hunter Green explained further. Inside a reinforced containment chamber, the Russian satellite was suspended in a magnetic sling. Its hull showed signs of exposure not to heat, but to compression. Time compression. When Pike and I reviewed the scan, we discovered we recovered a payload. But not just that. We recovered language. That it transmitted before it folded. Transmitted? What was the response? Hunter Green responded. A waveform stretched across the screen, almost organic. It transmitted Jack. Murmurs erupted. And what became of the Soviet frog team sent to retrieve it? Hunter Green answered. The team was taken into custody under Section 9 protocols. All data collected from their recovery effort was absorbed into ECHOFRAME, and their memories chemically erased. Their involvement was never disclosed publicly. Just like Jack and Sergeant B, Walden said. Their memories were wiped too. Correct, said Voss. We couldn't risk them recalling what the signal had embedded. What happened to the 5-man team? Hunter Green replied. The 5-man Air Force team dispatched by the wing commander had returned to base shaken, speechless. Each of them was pulled from standard duty and routed into a temporary debrief cell inside the subterranean annex beneath Building 472. The men had witnessed the impossible. Jack Barrett vanishing into a vortex of flickering plasma. Sergeant B pulled toward the anomaly before the field collapsed, and a voice broadcast directly into their minds, asking them one question. Do you remember who you were before? One by one they were interviewed, each account matched in tone but diverged in detail, time distortion, light inversion, Jack vanishing in a burst of resonance. Sergeant Moreno trembled. He was there, then not, like he melted into the pulse. Vickers simply whispered, "It spoke to him, not to us, to him." But Denning was different, calm, measured. Hunter Green nodded. He's already embedded. You mean controlled? Hunter Green fired back. Denning, their CO, had been programmed in advance, trigger words embedded during earlier Langley consultations with the CIA. He didn't remember issuing the call to advance on the anomaly, but the command had come from him, and now I took full control of his career, and he answers only to me and the CIA director. The official story relayed to the base was surgical in its simplicity, a night training operation simulating Cold War radio failure protocols. Radar malfunctions were blamed on outdated calibration. Lights were attributed to an atmospheric inversion layer. All personnel on duty were rotated, reclassified, or moved. The event was buried before sunrise. To the security teams at the East Gate and the WSA, the narrative was clear: a test of emergency readiness, an exercise involving electromagnetic interference simulations. Dr. Voss, came the voice of Senator Hayashi, how has this incident shaped our current defense technology? Voss didn't blink. You use it every day. The radar blur correction in modern stealth fighters, the adaptive optics in your hypersonic missiles, even the predictive targeting algorithms in drone swarms, all seeded from waveform data recorded that night. From Jack. Silence fell. So you admit the operation was still active beyond 1980? Hunter Green gave a thin smile. It never stopped. And how many more like Jack are out there? Hunter Green leaned forward. That depends, he said, on how many remember. The shadow left behind that night was not just born of fear or flight. It was a mirror, dark and deep, that wakes in those who dared to sleep. The light may have vanished from the treetops, but the imprint remained, etched into more than just soil. It was now in systems, in circuitry, in minds. The event at Rendlesham had crossed a threshold not meant to be returned from. Congress had heard the fragments. The scientists had buried the rest, but in the silence that followed, one truth echoed louder than any transmission. They weren't just witnesses, they were participants in something still unfolding, and what came next would no longer be confined to the forest. Jack Barrett had returned to duty, but not as the same man who vanished into the forest. Neither had Sergeant B. Their memories had been chemically scrubbed, fragmented under orders, and buried behind layers of psychological blocks. On paper, they were restored, fit, normal. But the phenomenon hadn't left them. It lingered, beneath their skin, inside their dreams, behind every quiet moment. The official line was simple: a fabricated report, a staged training exercise, a Cold War distraction. Colonel Ross Denning's memo would seal the narrative. His audio tape, once a clear chronicle, was scrubbed, cut into fragments, left confusing by design. Only a handful of lines survived, and even those misled. But the price of silence came with a new cost, because now Jack and Sergeant B were changing, and the government was watching. The program had already been folded into a special access protocol. Congress would never see the files. The president would never be briefed. Only a few knew: Dr. Elias Voss, Christopher Pike, and CIA liaison Christopher Hunter Green. And those few were no longer studying the phenomenon. They were learning how to weaponize it.
There's a silence under skin, a whisper where the truth had been, buried deep behind the veil, in fractured minds too lost to fail. A flash of light, a broken tree, two shadows where one man should be. They walk back into normal life with phantom wounds and hidden strife. And tell time could not. Orders came with blank-eyed grace. They wiped the hours, blurred the place. Names became a whispered code in blacked-out files the past corrode. Sad to be, he screamed at night. Said Jack still glowed beneath the light. But meds and lies and flights resumed as if no forest ever bloomed. Down in a vault, the tape was trimmed. The real was clipped, the false was hemmed. A memo vague, a light described. While men who saw it never lied. The satellite, they said, was burned. Returned in orbit, truth adjourned. The field remains, the pulse survives. And something awaits when memory hides. Tell me what I saw was wrong. Say the static wasn't strong. Erase the echo, block the sound. But memory still turns around. We served, we bled, and we forgot. But silence stains what time could not. Walked away, our duty done. But still we chase what we outrun. For Jack, for truth, for what remains. We are the men who hold the names.
After Jack Barrett and Sergeant B were retrieved from the time dilation bubble during the incident on the 28th, they were medically stabilized and returned to duty by the morning of the 29th. But neither man remembered what had happened. Not completely. Under the authority of CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green, memory suppression procedures were deployed. Neurochemical fogging was combined with targeted hypnosis and electromagnetic dampening, deliberately fragmenting access to short-term and long-term recall. The goal: eliminate coherent recollection of the forest event while preserving baseline cognitive function. It worked, but not for long. The phenomenon had other ideas. Jack would feel it first. A tightening in his spine. Glimpses of sequences that hadn't happened yet. Sergeant B described it as dreams that bled through while awake. Together, they carried a fracture, one that even the block mechanisms couldn't fully contain. That was when the problems began. They started missing time again. Reflexes shifted. Peripheral vision began to register movement too fast for the eye. They began responding to things before they happened. The CIA locked both of them into evaluation. But this time, they weren't treated like assets to be discarded. They were considered prototypes. Whatever intelligence resided within the field, it was not inert. It reacted to suppression. As Jack returned to base protocols, desk duty, light security walks, he began experiencing intermittent blackouts, then flashes. Not of what happened, but of something trying to remind him. The same was true for Sergeant B. He began waking in the night, drenched in sweat, unable to account for hours. They weren't alone. Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, the team lead on the recovery mission, was summoned to draft an internal memo summarizing the event. He was given a basic outline: anomalous lights observed, brief investigation, nothing significant. He complied, but not entirely of his own will. Programming had been built into his neural routines via a Cold War-era linguistic protocol. Trigger phrases embedded during early service training had turned Denning into a narrative filter, able to report, but only within strict bounds. The tape he recorded during the second encounter, the only live documentation, was later recovered by Pike and Hunter Green. Most of it was scrubbed. Less than 18 minutes remained, cut and distorted. The result? Confusion, a tactical move. Anyone listening would find it incomplete, ambiguous, and that was the point. Jack Barrett and Sergeant B had returned to duty with memories veiled, but something had changed. Physiological anomalies emerged first. Jack's reflexes began responding before stimuli occurred. Sergeant B reported hearing unspoken thoughts, glimpses of intention from those near him. What began as headaches and vivid dreams soon clarified into patterns. Predictive senses, lucid perception, accelerated cognition. They didn't talk about it at first, but the phenomenon wasn't done with them. Dr. Elias Voss had seen the markers. He had them quietly brought in on their days off. No uniforms, no paperwork. Just the two of them inside a converted SCIF beneath Martlesham Heath. There, Voss initiated a training regimen informed by Project Stargate. The protocols were unofficial, but exacting. He taught them Vipassana meditation to stabilize their internal signal and reduce cognitive dissonance. Kripalu yoga sessions followed, allowing them to stretch, center, and bring their awareness into congruence with their altered neural rhythms. But it was Voss's custom-designed Stargate method, an evolved integration of psycho-navigation and harmonic resonance that showed them how to reach into the signal field without breaking. They began by remote viewing coordinates already known to Voss. Then they were given unfamiliar targets. Both succeeded. Jack described what he saw as compressed timelines threaded into light. Sergeant B said he could feel the emotional residue of events before they happened. Voss documented everything. In time, they would become something more. Assets, yes, but also keys. Not just to the anomaly, to the human mind's convergence with it. By early March, both Jack and Sergeant B began experiencing physiological complications. Jack's EEG showed spikes in theta and gamma activity, correlating with altered perception states. Sergeant B reported migraines, tremors, and what he described as phantom echoes, hearing voices from conversations that hadn't occurred. The science team, led by Dr. Elias Voss and assisted by Pike, placed them under ongoing surveillance at the Edgewood Convergence Unit, a remote facility built for exotic field effects. There, it became clear that exposure to the time dilation bubble had not merely displaced them, it had rewritten small portions of their biology. Cellular decay in Jack's mitochondria was accelerating, but oddly so, influenced by oscillatory frequencies detected in the deep forest near Capel Green. Sergeant B's blood work revealed elevated isotopes not commonly found in terrestrial environments. Operation Echo Protocol had fractured the boundary between event and observer. The entire project, now updated to Echo Protocol Phase 2, was buried under a Special Access Program, SAP, with zero congressional oversight. Only a closed cell within the CIA and a fragmentary liaison group in the Ministry of Defense were granted access. Congress knew nothing. The President knew fragments. The director of the CIA knew everything. Even Dr. Voss had begun to fear what they had unearthed. Back at the site, a subterranean control grid was being reactivated. Using recovered telemetry from Night 2, the science team began shaping energy signatures into weapon profiles. Tests included directed temporal stasis fields, 3-second local freezes, short-range cognition disruptors based on harmonic bleed, plasma-based signal projection mimicking UAP motion blur. The science team expanded their research into the site. Capel Green was cordoned off under the guise of ordnance clearing. Beneath the soil, Voss's instruments recorded lingering quantum decoherence, signatures that couldn't be explained by anything conventional. A secret weapons initiative was born. They called it Silent Vector, and Jack and Sergeant B were its reluctant foundations. In effect, they were taking what had happened to Jack and turned it into defense architecture. But the forest was still active. One field technician collapsed at the crater's edge. Another claimed they saw their reflection blink in the wrong direction. Pike logged it all. Hunter Green classified it. Voss stared too long into the anomaly's pulse and said only one thing: "It's not finished with us." The present-day hearing was silent for a moment. A senator, older than the rest, finally leaned forward. "So the cover-up started right away," he said slowly. He glanced around the room. "And it lasted for decades. What was the reason it was kept so tight-lipped? Did it not hurt the advancement of our own technology? And how, exactly, did something this significant remain secret for so long? And who funded it?" No one answered immediately, because everyone already knew. The truth was too powerful to control, and the cost of revealing it had always been humanity itself. Jack Barrett and Sergeant B were no longer merely soldiers. They had become anomalies within their own biology, anomalies born of a phenomenon neither they nor their handlers fully understood. Under Dr. Voss's watch, the sessions of silent meditation and focused breath work weren't for healing. They were for alignment, an effort to tune Jack and Sergeant B into a signal that hadn't stopped transmitting. The deeper they trained, the clearer it became. They were not recovering, they were adapting. Yet even now, the truth was buried. The memo, the tape, the timeline, all doctored, all delivered in fragments designed to confuse. And in the shadows of classified vaults, questions still swirled like plasma. "So the cover-up started right away," one senator finally said, "and lasted for decades. What was the reason? Why keep it so tightly sealed? Didn't that slow our own advancement? And how the hell was it all funded?" Across the room, the silence lingered longer than it should have, because the real answer was too dangerous to put on record. Look ahead. Chapter 10. The Mirrored Saint. The message isn't done. As the anomaly prepares for its return, the signal buried in Jack begins to fracture. An intercepted transmission hints at something far worse, a shadow consciousness embedded within the echo structure itself, one that mimics, adapts, and evolves. It has a name now. Not given by man, but whispered from the edge of space-time. The Mirrored Saint. And as global surveillance intensifies and ancient doctrines are quietly rewritten, Jack will uncover a secret hidden not just from governments, but from time itself. Prepare to step back into the breach. Because the next convergence is already underway. Washington, D.C. Present day. Intelligence Oversight Committee. 0859 hours. The hearing room was cold, even under the press of camera lights and whispers. A crimson seal of the United States Senate loomed behind the dais, but it was the air itself, tight with implication, that held the room hostage. Jack Barrett sat upright, hands folded, brow drawn. Across from him sat CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green and Dr. Elias Voss, summoned again for further questioning. A senior senator adjusted his earpiece, leaned forward. "Mr. Barrett," he began, "for the record, how did you return? What equipment was used to retrieve you from the field after your disappearance?" Jack didn't blink. "The bubble wasn't just spatial," he said. "It was temporal. They created a harmonic echo of the original waveform, an artificial dilation field designed to collapse back into the moment where I was lost. It worked because I was still there." "Still there," he nodded. "Part of me hadn't returned." Hunter Green interjected, voice calm but assertive. "That operation was classified under Echo Frame Retrieval Protocol. The Russian satellite was also recovered, not destroyed as was previously assumed. Like Jack, it was pulled back into phase." The room fell quiet. Senator Aldridge narrowed his gaze. "Are you saying that a Soviet military asset, believed lost in 1980, is now in U.S. possession?" Voss leaned toward the mic. "Recovered. Interrogated. Deconstructed. Its guidance systems, its signal telemetry, showed signs of interaction with the same anomaly that affected Jack." "And the 5-man team that witnessed his disappearance?" the senator asked. They were debriefed separately, Voss confirmed. Each underwent memory mitigation protocols. Lieutenant Colonel Denning was later reassigned to intelligence operations, Hunter Green's directive. The others were reassigned. No public record. What of the Russian team sent to recover the satellite? They were detained, then repatriated under diplomatic pretense, Hunter Green said. Without disclosure, with deniability, Voss answered. And then the question that changed the room. How has this affected modern technology? Jack looked up. You're already using it.
Said it was buried, sealed by command, a shadow erased by a trembling hand. But truth, like a signal, refuses to fade. It echoes in silence in choices we made. Inside the lie, a fracture grew. A voice remembered what Jack once knew. A world held hostage to echoes unheard, but the signal returned in every word. We are the static between what's true, caught in a war we never knew. He stood before them, eyes alight, a man reborn in spectral light. Memory torn, identity blurred, yet still he speaks, still he's heard. Waking in futures that shouldn't exist, dreaming in time loops, cloaked in a mist. The veil was lifted, the frame undone. One was returned, two had begun. Congress leans in, shadows recoil, secrets unwind in a slow uncoil. The satellite wasn't lost to flame, it came back, whispering Jack's name. We are the static between what's true, caught in a war we never knew. He stood before them, eyes alight, a man reborn in spectral light. Memory torn, identity blurred, yet still he speaks, still he's heard. To erase the night from the day, but the signal remembers, it knows the way. We are the static between what's true, caught in a war we never knew. He stood before them, eyes alight, a man reborn in spectral light. Memory torn, identity blurred, yet still he speaks, still he's heard. Still he's heard.
Washington, D.C., Intelligence Committee Vault, December 18th, 2025. The hearing had adjourned at 7:04 p.m. the previous night. What followed was not rest, not clarity, but a warning. Dr. Voss, CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green, and Jack Barrett had been ushered into a private side chamber by a security detail whose clearance exceeded that of most seated senators. No transcripts were recorded. No aides allowed. Just a single sentence delivered by the black-suited agent at the door. He knows. Private briefing, Georgetown, 9:13 p.m. The restaurant was old money, walnut-paneled, discreet, favored by legacy operatives and those who ran agencies without their names etched on doors. Jack sat between Voss and Hunter Green in a rear booth shielded from prying eyes by low lighting and a subtle audio-masking field. Voss didn't eat. He stared into his coffee like it held a signal only he could decipher. Hunter Green leaned in first. "We withheld things from you. Not because you didn't deserve to know, because you weren't ready to become what those answers would turn you into." Jack narrowed his eyes. "What am I becoming?" "An activation vector," Voss said quietly. "You and your son." Silence expanded. "You've both been exposed to the lattice. Leo before birth, through your altered DNA. You were changed, but he was born into the resonance." Jack pushed back from the table, shaking. "This isn't just about me anymore." "No," Hunter Green confirmed. "This is about Echo Frame." December 18th, 2025, 9:42 a.m. Jack Barrett stood in silence at the base of the Capitol steps. Day 4 was about to begin. Marble stretched above him, gleaming white beneath a crisp December sky. His attorney, a quiet presence beside him, adjusted his notes but didn't speak. They both knew what was about to unfold, the weight of decades, of buried operations, of memory wiped and restored. This wasn't just testimony. This was the reckoning. Jack's eyes lingered on the flag above, flapping against the wind like a signal from another timeline. The world believed they were chasing the unknown, but Jack knew the unknown was already inside. Senator Koenig's voice cut through the vault as the sealed doors hissed closed. "Mr. Barrett, you said yesterday you remembered everything. That memory had returned despite suppression." Jack nodded. The hearing chamber settled into silence as Jack Barrett returned to the microphone. Seated behind him were Dr. Elias Voss and CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green, both now under congressional subpoena. Their faces were unreadable. The senators were not. The chairman leaned forward. "Mr. Barrett, please continue. Earlier testimony concluded with your retrieval and the operational consequences that followed." Jack inhaled slowly. "I'll speak plainly now." He placed a redacted folder on the desk. "This is the sequence log for Operation Echo Protocol, Night 3. But it didn't begin that night. It began before my first deployment, before the phenomenon chose me." Senator Tillman interjected. "You stated chose. Are you suggesting a level of agency?" "I'm stating it recognized something," Jack replied, "and it wanted that signal back. We'd like to know about January 7th, 1981, the event after the second encounter, what happened at Capel Green, and afterward." Jack looked to Voss. A subtle nod. He began. "I woke up gasping," Jack said. "But something wasn't right. I was still there. Part of me hadn't come back." The panel shifted uncomfortably. "They thought the phenomenon had closed, that the bubble collapsed, but it was still active, drawing in energy, drawing in memory." "What did you do?" asked Koenig. "I waited. Then, I was summoned." A low-band transmission had pulsed from beneath Capel Green. A Russian SIGINT array caught it first. It carried a message on a Cold War protocol: long dead, echo frame, convergence unstable, presence incomplete. CIA handlers scrambled. NSA analysts demanded reconfirmation, but Jack had already moved. The signal pulled him back, and so did another. Sergeant B, now experiencing lucid flashes that weren't his. He didn't remember the night before, but he remembered the forest. Back in the classified chamber, Voss and Hunter Green disclosed the existence of Project Echo Frame to the senators. Not as a proposal, but as something that had been activated the moment Jack disappeared into the light. The Russian satellite, Voss expanded on his earlier testimony, was never destroyed. We thought it had been vaporized, but it was translated. Koenig blinked. Into what? Hunter Green stepped forward now. It wasn't destroyed. The Zenit payload was redirected, looped like Barrett, caught in the temporal aperture and held. When we retrieved Jack, the satellite was still broadcasting, but not to us. To whom then? Hunter Green's voice lowered. That's something that's hard to explain. The silence following that answer hung thick. Hunter Green followed up with, back into the loop. Like Jack, part of the lattice now. They described how, upon Jack's reappearance, they tested field resonance at the original landing site. Another senator leaned in. How did you provoke the phenomenon to interact with Jack Barrett? We didn't, Voss said carefully. We created the condition. The phenomenon responded. Barrett's biology aligned with its return signature. We just watched. What happened to the Russian recon team? Koenig asked. Voss was blunt. They were captured, then forgotten. Dr. Voss, a senator asked, did the British Condign report incorporate data from the Rendlesham events directly? Voss nodded. Select entries were folded into Volume 2 and Appendix G, under a different label. They never admitted it publicly. But yes, it was foundational. And how much of our current directed energy and sensor-evading technologies stem from that? Voss hesitated. A significant portion. The Rendlesham data modeled atmospheric lensing, field-driven cognition interference, and harmonic propulsion resonance. It informed plasma stealth cloaking, drone noise obfuscation, and more. A follow-up question was then asked about the team involved in Night 3 events. Voss further described what the team, Captain Devon Haynes, Technical Sergeant, Moreno, Senior Airman Vickers, Airman First Class Avery, and Lieutenant Colonel Denning had seen. They described Denning's behavior. Flat effect, unblinking compliance. Denning, Hunter Green said, was already embedded with a neural suggestion layer. Pre-programmed. His trigger phrases were embedded into his operational profile in 1979. Jack listened. His pulse slowed. The silence that followed felt like space. Each member of the 5-man team was interviewed. Each had gaps. Each described a moment where Jack Barrett simply vanished. Light bending around him, like a ripple in curved glass. Sergeant B remembered seeing the event and then waking up again at base. Voss concluded, we administered full memory veiling. Same for Barrett. Same for B. Only recently has the degradation begun. And what about now? A younger staffer asked. What are they now? Hunter Green answered, assets, unstable ones. A quiet senator from Arizona leaned forward. This cover-up started almost immediately and lasted decades. Why? Didn't it slow technological advancement? Voss exhaled. It was never about slowing it down. It was about controlling its trajectory. And the funding? Another asked. Hunter Green smiled, tight-lipped. You authorized it. You just didn't know what you were signing. Alone, Jack stared at the ceiling of his secured room. Fluorescent lights humming softly above, the edges of the tiles warping as though the air itself had memory. His fingers twitched, sensing frequencies he no longer needed ears to hear. The same voice that had once whispered, "You're already inside," returned now with new words. "You are the loop now, and the gate is not closed." Jack's eyes did not move. But somewhere, deep behind them, something did. SCIF hearing room, 2045 hours. The heavy door hissed open with pneumatic finality. A suited official from the National Security Council stepped forward, credentials shimmering with a red border that few in the room had ever seen. He approached the committee chairman without ceremony and whispered a coded sequence. The senator blinked once, then rose with an audible exhale. The official's voice rang out next, not loud, but final. Ladies and gentlemen, effective immediately, this hearing and all subsequent data related to Project EchoFrame is now designated under Special Access, Program Blacklight 77. Clearance will be restricted to the Gang of Eight, the DNI, and the President of the United States. All others are to be excused. You will each sign a non-disclosure directive before departing. And as of this moment, this hearing never took place. No one spoke. Security escorts moved silently to designated exit points. As Jack watched from behind the reinforced glass partition, the world above his had just shifted timelines again, this time not through resonance, but bureaucracy. He turned his gaze inward once more. The voice returned one last time. We are already through. The resonance is not waiting. The future is already awake. The lights dimmed slightly as Jack's vitals synced with an unseen pulse deep beneath the base. FBI agents immediately took charge of Jack Barrett, doctor. Elias Voss, CIA analyst Christopher Hunter Green, and Mr. David Rourke, Mr. Barrett's legal counsel, and they were placed into protective custody under joint directive. They were escorted by federal agents to a secure and undisclosed location where they will receive a classified briefing outlining the next phase of containment, assessment, and operational transition. This measure was taken in response to emerging intelligence indicating potential threats to national security stemming from the resurfacing elements within the Rendlesham framework. Further details remain classified pending interagency coordination. The lights in the hearing room dimmed as Jack Barrett's final words echoed beneath the vaulted ceiling. The silence that followed wasn't simple. It was loaded, a fragile boundary between revelation and collapse. Across the world, listening stations lit up, atmospheric sensors recalibrated, and inside the Pentagon's deepest vaults, red folders were removed from temperature-sealed safes. EchoFrame is no longer theoretical, Hunter Green had warned. It's responding. But it wasn't responding to them. Jack sat in silence, his fingertips trembling as the voice returned once more. Inside his mind, inside the resonance. You've only just begun, Jack. The recursion has started. The others will awaken, and so will the threshold. Meanwhile, in a remote surveillance facility near Mount Kailash, a waveform matching Barrett's DNA signature spiked, then split. Earth had reached the turning point. It would never be the same again.
Whispers in the trees, they called your name. The shadow burned in silent flame. Time forgot where you were torn, but echoes knew the child you'd born. The signal stars keep watching through memory's eyes. What you became was never just you. One breath split in two. glass and steel, the loop completes. A soul divided, time repeats. No more running, no more fear. You were always already here. The signal remembers the fracture is whole. One name reborn to carry the soul. When truth is a weapon and time is the thread, the echo is never dead. You're already inside.
Raven Rock Mountain Complex, December 19th, 2025, 0400 hours, Eastern Standard Time. The helicopter blades groaned as the descent began. Jack Barrett sat in the dim hold, flanked by CIA analyst Hunter Green and Dr. Elias Voss. His attorney, David Rourke, was left behind by design. No one spoke. The only light came from the red glow of instrumentation and the occasional flicker of Voss's datapad. Jack's breathing was slow, but not calm. Something below, beneath the rock, beneath the lies, was pulling at him. They landed at an unmarked helipad tucked inside the folds of Raven Rock. The bunker doors opened with hydraulic force, revealing a corridor lined with matte black blast walls and a line of armed guards with no insignia. Clearance beyond top secret, above black budget. This was the core. They were escorted deep into the mountain, through reinforced checkpoints and retinal scans. Voss gave quiet acknowledgements at each station. Hunter Green stayed silent, observant. Jack watched the walls. They vibrated as if reality itself thinned the deeper they went. Finally, they entered a briefing chamber lit with soft overhead panels and lined with metal chairs. The president was already there, flanked by 2 National Security Council officials and the director of the Office of Net Assessment. There were no introductions. Voss stepped forward. "We're here because the protocol has reached final alignment," he said. "What Jack carries is no longer just embedded. It's active, and the secondary node, his son, is being brought here now." Jack froze. "Leo?" Voss nodded. "He's en route under Pentagon security. You'll see him soon. But you need to understand, this wasn't chance. The 2 of you were part of a designed convergence, genetic harmonics, exposure resonance, heritability profiles. None of it random." Jack's mind reeled. The mother? Who was she really? "She was chosen," Voss said bluntly. "Monitored since adolescence. Her own lineage was tied to a Soviet exfiltrated subject from the original Stargate trials. Remote perception, synaptic layering, suppressed psionic response. She was fertile ground for a fusion experiment. You were the catalyst." Hunter Green stepped forward, expression tight. What emerged was not a normal child. Leo began showing signal response at age 5, pulse variance at 9. At 13, he activated a harmonic field in a secure chamber without contact. You weren't told because he wasn't ready. But now he is. Jack sat, staring at the floor. "And what am I?" "You're the original interface," Voss replied. "Your encounter at Capel Green fractured space-time locally. But it also wrote a new pathway across bloodlines. Leo is the inheritor, but you—" Voss paused. "You're the translator. You bridge the past and what's coming." Jack swallowed. "You kept this from me for 25 years. "We had to," Hunter Green added. Until you reached neurological convergence, until your signal field stabilized. You weren't safe, not to yourself or to him. But now, the signal is self-sustaining. You're no longer vulnerable. You're becoming recursive. Jack's voice was low. What happens now? Voss stepped forward and placed a small device on the table. A shimmering 3D schematic hovered above it, two waveform strands interlocking across a void. Your minds will be merged, briefly, he said. The encounter is scheduled for 0700. Before that, you'll undergo conditioning to prevent cascade effects. But first, you need to remember how this started. Raven Rock, memory induction. Chamber, 0500 hours. Jack lay inside a curved titanium pod, cool metal pressing against his spine. The chamber was nearly silent except for the faint hum of localized EM dampeners. Hunter Green watched from the other side of the Plex alloy, arms crossed. Voss stood by the neural interface station. As the induction began, memories flooded Jack's perception, not images, but structures. Bioluminescent threads, synaptic echoes, and the pulse of the anomaly, the moment it touched him in 1980. But this time, it responded. Leo, a voice whispered. Not human, not alien, but a synthesis. Then, a flashback. Flashback. March 23rd, 1998. Wiesbaden Army Medical Center. Jack stood over the delivery table, his hands trembling. The woman, Elena, squeezed his hand once, then let go. The infant emerged silent. But as the attending nurse leaned down, a monitor flatlined. Not the babies, but the instruments themselves. Every watch in the room stopped, and the infant opened his eyes. Not newborn eyes, but something older. Later that night, military personnel entered the maternity ward. Jack was sedated. The child was tagged. Elena was told it was a routine genetic screening, but 3 floors down, Leo's blood was already in transit. To dreamland. Raven Rock. Outside the chamber, 0607 hours. David Rourke stood in a side corridor, pacing behind a one-way pane of reinforced glass. He had been kept from entry. He was no longer Jack's legal counsel, at least not for what was unfolding below. This was beyond law, beyond nation. He opened a restricted folder marked Operation Resonant Echo, Fold Event Convergence, predicted January 16th, 2026. Analyst note, reintegration event is time-anchored. Target is expected to encounter original consciousness displaced during initial exposure, 1980 to 1981 Capelle event. Cycle completion, 45 years. Risk, total identity collapse. 5 days. Jack had 5 days before he would re-encounter the version of himself that never returned from the field. The Jack that remained trapped within the anomaly since 1980, waiting to collapse back into this version, waiting to become whole. Presidential Briefing Room, Lower Level 3, 016 hours. The president sat in the subterranean chamber beneath Raven Rock, eyes fixed on a countdown projected in cold blue light. Convergence window, T-5 days, 3 hours, 18 minutes. National Security Advisor Chen adjusted her glasses. We've exhausted containment. It accelerated on its own once Leo stabilized. The president frowned. Then what happens when they connect? Voss's voice over secure line. We don't know. But the anomaly seems to want reintegration. We believe Jack's 1980 consciousness is still broadcasting. That signal completes the loop when he merges with Leo. Hunter Green followed. We don't just observe this anymore, sir. We're inside it now. Jack is the convergence vector. Leo is the mirror. The president whispered. And the world. Silence. Elevator shaft. Descending to the convergence chamber. 0620 hours. Jack stood beside Voss in the lift. Metal walls shimmered slightly as if folding around unseen currents. "You feel it?" Voss asked. Jack nodded. "It's like pressure in the spine. Like the air remembers me." "You're close," Voss said. "What entered the anomaly in 1980 never really came back. You're an echo, but you've stabilized. Now, the original is calling home." Jack breathed deep. "And if I collapse, then your son becomes the carrier, and the war begins. Convergence chamber, 0630 hours." Jack stepped through the threshold. The chamber was massive, circular, alive. Energy pulsed beneath the glass floor. Light spiraled from unseen seams in the walls, forming an atmospheric dome. Resonant shielding flickered like trapped auroras. In the center stood Leo. Taller now, composed, wearing matte black fatigues marked only with a silver shoulder line. He looked older than his years, 27 going on timeless. "You made it," Leo said softly. Jack approached, stunned. "You've been waiting?" Leo nodded. "I've seen all the versions. But this one feels complete." They stood face to face. The air shimmered between them. "They said I was the translator," Jack muttered, "and you were the stabilizer." "They weren't wrong," Leo replied. "But it's more than that. I remember 1980. I saw it. Through you, through me. We're not father and son anymore. We're in sequence." Jack reached forward. Leo mirrored him, their palms met. Flash. The woods. Capel Green. The object is rising. Sergeant B screaming. Jack is being pulled forward. Leo was standing across the clearing, a child in the trees, watching, always watching. Flash. Inside the anomaly. Timeless light. Equations spiraling. Jack Barrett. Leo Barrett. Signal accepted. They weren't two anymore. They were one waveform, finally synchronized. And far below, sealed behind 6 meters of blast-proof alloy, the mirrored saint stirred. "He's closing the loop," it whispered. "But I've already rewritten it." Jack and Leo stood motionless, hands still connected. The convergence field shimmered around them, threads of violet light crackling where their palms met, not burning, but rewriting. The chamber had become a tuning fork for consciousness. The anomaly wasn't just watching, it was responding. Jack gasped, staggered by what he saw inside Leo's eyes. It wasn't just his son staring back at him. It was the light from Capel Green. It was the boy in the trees. It was himself. 2 timelines, 2 bloodlines, 1 frequency, and now, for the first time in 45 years, the signal was whole. A deep subterranean pulse rang out, low, seismic, alive. Somewhere in the dark belly of the earth, systems activated, ancient ones, not man-made. Above the chamber, Voss and Hunter Green watched the readings spike. "We're registering internal feedback," Voss muttered. "Neurological lock. Recursive consciousness. They're inside the convergence band." Then, silence. All monitors dropped to black. Jack's voice echoed across the chamber, though his lips never moved. He was never behind me in time. He was always ahead, waiting. The room vibrated. A soft tearing sound. The lights folded inward, and far below, beneath Raven Rock's lowest level, the mirrored saint stirred for the final time. "The translator has met the mirror," it whispered. "Now let the threshold open.